Hello, everybody. How you doing? You're listening to KHTS, FM 98.1, AM 1220, your hometown station. I'm Rich Szerman, and you're listening to The Real Estate Fix with me. Thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate it. Got a lot of stuff to go over today. We've got a special guest in today, my wife Jane, the lawyer and brains of the group here. It was nice enough to come in today because today's show is going to be, we're going to do a little bit about the market, not a lot, but hasn't changed a whole lot. But what has changed is the laws in the state of California have changed somewhat significantly, and oh boy do I mean significantly, and this is really for the good for most of us. And we need to talk about it because those of you guys who listen to the show regularly, you're getting this first because I have not seen a single story anywhere in the state on this yet, including from the California Association of Realtors, and it is a big, big deal. I've been fighting zombie seconds. You guys know that. I talk about it all the time. Those are seconds you didn't know existed, junior liens you didn't know existed, and came back to life to steal your equity. We're going to be talking about that today. There is a new law, and it is... Well, I've been waiting for 30 years for a law like this, so it is a huge, huge screaming deal. And we're going to talk about it all today, and because Jane is smarter than I am, and she has a law degree and I don't. She also has an MBA, and I don't. But she was nice to come in today, and she's going to talk all about that with us, so we're going to get into that. There's also been a change in the law regarding foreclosures and timeframes. There's some things you can do to extend it. We've got some new power there. We talked about that previously, thanks to our Assemblywoman Pilar Schiavo, so thank you to her for that. We're going to talk about that a little bit as well, and we're going to talk a little bit about some changes in landlord-tenant laws really having to do with notification, which is a little bit of a lesser thing. But so all these things are pretty darn good, and I have not heard anybody talking about them. And as you guys know who listen regularly, I am not terribly fond of the way the state of California does laws and puts things together, and I suppose that's true of all 50 of the states, but it seems worse here because I live here. This is one of the times where, under the heading of a broken clock is right twice a day, where a really kind of political maneuver that I wouldn't ordinarily endorse myself, where they kind of sneak something through in the dead of night onto another bill that had nothing to do with it. But in this case, it's going to help a lot of homeowners, and I think it's the only way this gets done. So we're going to talk about that today. But let's get started with kind of market wrap stuff. We'll start out there. So last couple of weeks, haven't seen a whole heck of a lot. Prices continue to soften and interest rates remain high. The average rate on the popular 30-year fixed mortgage rate has hovered just around 7%. It's a tiny bit under that right now this year. And after the Federal Reserve has paused its interest rate cuts and concerns that with concerns that President Donald Trump's protectionist trade policies would stoke inflation. Because it will. Because a tariff is a tax. And for those of you who want to get online and tell me I'm wrong about that, I'm happy to have that argument with you. But anytime the government creates an unnecessary, even whether it's warranted or not, I shouldn't say unnecessary, warranted or not, increase in the cost of a good, that is a tax. And when you increase taxes on consumers, when the inflation rate is already a little higher than we need it to be, it's going to be a problem. And the Fed's has got a meeting next week, and I'm here to tell you, they're not going to drop the rate next week either. Probably not after that either, because the only thing in my view that's dumber than these tariffs is not committing to them, is this on-again, off-again nonsense. I mean, my goodness, Wall Street has a term for it now. They call it taco. Trump always chickens out. And they call it that because, well, it's derogatory, but they call it that because it's an actual term they attach to stocks now. So the market is already pricing in some of this insanity. And it's causing inflation to go higher. But here's some headlines I think you guys should hear because I love bringing you guys the headlines because this is what everyone's saying. This is nationwide. U.S. home sales fall more than expected in June. That was Reuters. U.S. new home sales below expectations in June as housing supply rises. That's NBC. Home seekers asking 9% too much, data shows. That's MoneyWise. Lock-in effect makes it harder to buy homes even if rates fall. That's CNBC. And these are all in the last 2 days. And then delistings, people taking their houses off the market, surges nearly 50% as sellers who can't get their price quit the market in frustration. That doesn't mean that half of the houses on the market have come off the market. It just means that the amount of people pulling their houses off the market right now has gone up by 50% nationwide. But basically the deal is existing homes are coming down in value. Prices are coming down. In our area, we've already dropped about 1.6, 1.7%. We're going to lose about 3%, maybe as much as 4% by the end of this year. And that doesn't sound like a whole lot, but if you got $1 million house, 3-4% is all of a sudden 40 grand. So it can be a big, big deal. And the people who, are smart about this, who are looking to sell a house, who get ahead of the market, who get their price under the market and generate lots and lots of interest, will be fine. But the people who are chasing the market or who priced their house because their neighbor's house sold for X amount, 6 weeks ago or a couple of months ago, whatever it is, are going to lose. I mean, that's just it. That is the reality. I've been saying for months, I think I've been saying for a year, if you have a house to sell, Do it now because things are only going to get worse. And these people who are taking their houses off the market need to be prepared to sit for another 2 to 3 years. I hope it's less than that, but I think we're going to be in a downward spin here. It's not going to be a spiral like 2008, 9, and 10, but it is going to be a downward march here for a while as far as prices. And that's simple supply and demand. And again, to go over that, the demand has been depressed because the interest rates are very, very high, especially for first-time buyers. I mean, if my wife and I were to sell our house, we're some of those people who got the low interest rate and a refi during the pandemic. And if we were to sell our house and buy the exact same house with the exact same price, our mortgage payment would nearly triple. And that's just insane. We're not doing that. So you get a lot of people who aren't selling houses. But I think we're going to be losing housing prices here for the next couple of years. I think the prices are going to continue to slide until the interest rate gets below 6, probably not until it gets down to about 5.5. But we'll see. And I hope I'm wrong about that. I'd like to see prices continue to go up. I own houses. I think it'd be great. But they need to come down because the first-time buyer market has been cratered. A lot of the other parts of the market have been cratered, and we need to fix that. And again, going back to supply and demand, demand is very, very low, all-time lows in a lot of ways because interest rate's too high. It's just too high for people to buy. It makes no sense. And supply has gone through the roof. In California, we've got 40% more houses on the market right now than we did 6 weeks ago. Think about that. In the last 6 weeks, month and a half, the number of houses available in California has gone up 40%. So again, if you have a house to sell, it better be a deal. It better be a deal because it's the nicest one in the area. It better be a deal because of price or a combination of the two. But you can forget about taking a look at what the last guy's house sold for, put yours on the market for a percent or two higher and expect it to sell. That ain't going to happen. We are headed the other way. Prices are coming down. And again, for those of you who want to tell me I'm wrong online, I love hearing from you. You can talk to me all the time. I'm happy to do it. You can call me in person and tell me I'm wrong. I particularly like the guy who refers to me online as Nostradamus. I love that. That is the best insult ever. And I keep saying, I think he got it from Big Bang Theory, actually. But anyway, I don't mind being called that. But I wouldn't make a habit of it. But it's not prophecy. It's just math. It's just math. Market trends are very easy to spot in real estate, both on the national level and on the area level and just our little town level, because there's a lot of data. There's a lot of data, and that will lead you to a conclusion if you bother to look at it. And the math tells us, the data tells us that prices are coming down, interest rates are too high, and prices are going to continue to come down. And that's where the market's at. So if you have any questions about that, call me anytime. I can be reached at 661-714-1400. Again, 661 714-1400, or you can get to me through the station. You can get me through the station. You can always get my email address, which is richsherman@gmail.com. Sherman with a Z, of course. richsherman@gmail.com. Oh, and we also have a snazzy new website out there that we just launched. I should tell you guys about that. You can go to www.richsherman.com. and see all kinds of fun stuff that we do and how we do it and all kinds of good stuff there as well. So check out the website. Send me emails if you'd like. Call me if you really need to. Totally fine. Happy to talk to you. But that is where the market is at, and that is where it's going to be for a while. So if you have a house to sell, if you can hold it for another 3 or 4 years, hang out. Prices will go back up. But if you have a house that you need to sell in the next 12 to 18 months, it better be a deal. I would even say 24 months, but at least until the interest rate reverses course. And it's going to be a while because of the current occupant of the White House. So that's where we're at as far as market wrap. So before we go to break, I want to at least get started on kind of the seismic quake that we've seen kind of in my business. As you guys know, I do a lot of pro bono work. We do a lot of pro bono work, foreclosure defense, trying to keep people in their houses and keep the banks at bay because the banks are often bad actors when it comes to this sort of thing. And, for the first time in a long time, we're getting at least a couple of laws that favor the consumer, that favor the homeowner, and don't favor the bank, which is a rare and wonderful thing because almost all the laws favor the banks, and we can get into that a little bit. But let's start here. The biggest of the rules has to do with zombie seconds. So I think we talk about that one first because that's the biggie.
Sure.
But let me tell you first, let me give you the definition. The CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, describes a zombie second as follows. Old debts can be written off by the lender and sold for pennies on the dollar to debt collectors. Sometimes the mortgage company goes silent and stops sending statements or communicating with you altogether. Years later, sometimes decades later, a debt collector reaches out to collect on the debt. Because these mortgages seem to reappear after being considered dead or gone for so long, they're sometimes they should always be called, zombie mortgages. A friend of mine coined that term about 20 years ago. So, Lou, if you're listening, that was you and I. Anyway, zombie mortgages. So, zombies are never your first mortgage. It's always got to be a subordinate lien. So, second, third, fourth, whatever, just meaning not your first. And it's a loan that we used to say has been uncollected, or they've not made any attempt to collect or contact the homeowner over 10 years. But now we're saying 3 years. And the reason for that is because of this snazzy new law. So, do you want to tell them a little about what the new foreclosure prevention law is?
Sure. Yeah. No, I'm with you on the fact that it's very nice to see there being any rules put into place to protect the homeowners from some of these bad practices. Banks would, as you well know, take a loan, charge it off on their, and take a tax write-off on their taxes and send a letter saying that they were not collecting it any further, and yet unbeknownst to the homeowner, they would sell it on the secondary market.
Let me explore that a little bit. What a bank does, when a bank sends you a letter or tells you that your loan has been charged off, that is just an accounting practice that they have.
Yep.
They have to tell you that because they're rules, but what it means is they're telling the IRS and the State Franchise Tax Board that the debt is, and this is the rules, the definition, that is no longer collectible and of no value. So they take a tax break for that, and then they turn around and they sell that loan in the secondary markets for 50, 60 cents on the dollar, sometimes as low as 10 cents on the dollar, depending on how many times it's been sold and what the valuation is of the loan. So they say it's of no value,
but it's a
they
value.
take a tax write-off, and then they sell it for a value. And when I've complained about this to CEOs at banks on occasion, when I have occasion to, and what they'll tell you is, yes, but we report the money we make by selling the loan in the secondary market. But those are taxed differently than the write-off on the mortgage. So it's an accounting scam, in my view, I'll call it a scam, that the banks use to make themselves money or save themselves money at the cost of the consumer. So that's what that is. I want you guys to kind of get in on that because it's completely unfair. It is not the way the tax code is supposed to work, and the banks are, in effect, stealing from the government. And they found a way to legally do it, but I think that's fair. They steal from the homeowners, again, legally as well, so why not? So anyway, so let's talk about exactly what the law does.
Yeah, so what it does now is it says that these subordinate liens that have been out of communication with the homeowner and have ceased communicating now have a clock ticking on various activities so that if, this is very important, if they violate these rules, and I'll get into them in a minute, there are 6 categories of unlawful practices that have now been defined in the California Civil Code. If your subordinate lien holder bank commits these unlawful practices,
Any one of them,
you have rights to prevent them foreclosing on your loan. Now, importantly, that doesn't mean it's a permanent. They're not permanently prevented from foreclosing, and you still owe the money. This is just having to do with them foreclosing on a loan that has been dormant for some time, or they have been out of communication on.
Zombie
and it shifts, yes, the zombie mortgages, and it shifts some of the power back to the homeowner. However, this is very important. The homeowner has to be aware of it.
Yeah.
If you have to know about these rules because you have to assert them, and you had, especially because they're so brand new. Many of the banks don't know about them. This was actually the law that came into place. It was AB, I think 130, but it was, I believe it was a budget bill to begin with. They added on a number of housing rules having to do with rolling back environmental restrictions and to ease building, which is generally good, but 90% of the law was that, and then they added on this little zombie mortgage bit literally in the last couple of hours. So nobody knew it was coming, so nobody's really prepped for this. California Association of Realtors hasn't notified people. It's been very limited in who knows about it. So very important that you know that if you have a junior lien, you have some protections now, and it applies to junior liens. It applies to all residential mortgages. So it could be your principal residence. It doesn't have to be your principal residence, I should say. It can be your home. It can be a rental house, a vacation house. Any typical residential mortgage applies. So that's good. You know, it's not too restrictive. And it gives the homeowner the right. Well, do you want to get into the procedure?
Well, we can talk about the procedure after break, but I want you guys to important you guys get this. If you have, this doesn't count on first mortgages, but if you have a second mortgage that is attempting to foreclose and they have not talked to you and at any point during the life of that loan, for I think it's 3 years, right? It's 3 years?
Different rules, but yes, if they've ceased any communication about the loan for 3 years, that's the first category.
Yeah. If they haven't done that, then the bank trying to foreclose under those circumstances is now an illegal act. I've already used this. This law only came into effect on July 1st. And I mean, when I say nobody saw it coming, nobody saw it coming. I do this all day, every day, and I've been doing it for over 30 years. I had no idea this law was even being contemplated, let alone was going to get passed. Now, usually, when our politicians slide something into a bill about something else at the last minute and kind of force it through, kind of sneak it through in the dead of night, I'm not usually a big fan of that. I don't think that's the way laws should be written. That's not the way they should be codified. But I don't know. This one works. I'll take it. I'll just swallow hard at the way it was put together and just be glad that we have it, because we are already using this law as recently as last night to prevent foreclosures.
Yeah.
In the office, we already have almost half a dozen clients who would have had to file bankruptcy or do something else that would have further dug the hole for them before they could get out, that no longer have to. I mean, think about how huge that is. You could, but somebody hearing my voice right now, it might turn out a year from now, you get a letter in the mail about a mortgage you haven't seen or heard anything about for 20 years, 2008, get a lot of those, that you thought was gone because of a bankruptcy or a loan mod, or you got a letter from the bank that said, your loan's being charged off, no further payments are necessary, and you just get this letter in the mail that says, hey, how you doing? We've determined that you took out a $50,000 loan in 2008, and so we would like it if you could please pay us back $230,000 in the next 90 days, or we're going to take your house. And by the way, that is a true story from an actual client right now. And you're expected to pay not just the amount of the debt that you originally had, but all of the back due, all of the fees and penalties and everything else. And that's how your $50,000 debt becomes a $220,000 debt.
And important to note, that is not an accidental side effect of any of this. This was intentional behavior on the part of the banks to go silent, because their loans, many of them were underwater and there was no equity in the home to pay it off. And so they have waited very intentionally until property values have come up.
In the case of the client I'm talking about, had they gone after her in 2008, there was nothing to get. She had no equity. The first over-encumbered the house. She would have filed a Chapter 13 bankruptcy and stripped the second. No more second. And a lot of people out there wish they had done that, but they thought their second was already wiped out. So when these things come back, at least now we have another way to fight them. Now, this is a new law, and I want to underline that, because it is so new that even when you talk to CR Legal and try to get guidance, they go, what law are you talking about? I did find some people there, and I don't want to make them sound horrible. CR Legal, actually, some people there knew it, but they said the same thing, and I'm going to tell you now, is we don't know how this is going to manifest.
Yeah, they're doing the same thing we are, which is trying to figure out how this is going to unfold in the courts.
We were talking about this on the way in. I like a law that's short. I like a law that is written in plain English. I'm a fan of both of those things. The problem in this case is the legislation is so short that it leaves a lot of room for interpretation. So until these things start working their way through the legal system, and I'm sure there are cases already brewing, I'm sure July 2nd there were cases that got going, we don't really know how it's going to manifest. But what we do know now is what the law says. And there's a list of things we'll get into after break, but there's a list of things that are now deemed illegal acts that if a bank attempts to do, they are breaking the law. And because the banks don't know a lot about how these laws are going to balance out as well, I've been able to get away with a lot over the last week and a half as far as getting foreclosures stopped on zombie mortgages, because they don't know exactly what the law is going to be and not going to be, and they want to err on the side of being careful about their liability. So we've been doing pretty well with it, and I hope we continue to. But we'll see what happens. But I tell you what, let's go to break. Let's listen to some of the sponsors, and then we come back. We'll get into the illegal acts under it's Civil Code 2924.
Unlawful acts.
Oh, sorry, I like saying illegal better, but unlawful will be fine. Unlawful acts under Civil Code Section 292413, otherwise known as the Zombie Mortgage Law. So we'll talk all about that when we get back. This is KHTS. I'm your host, Rich Szerman, on The Fix with Rich. KHTS 98.1 FM, AM 1220, your hometown station. Hey everybody, thank you for listening through the break. You're listening to The Real Estate Fix. I'm your host, Rich Szerman, on KHTS, AM 1220, FM 98.1. And thank you guys for coming back after the break. We were talking about this new law, which is actually, I have it here, Civil Code 2924.13 of the California Civil Code, if you're interested in looking it up. I just call it the Zombie Second Law. I think that the Zombie Mortgage Law, I think that's a better way to look at it, because it kills zombies, which is fantastic. This is a stake through the heart of a lot of these guys, which is good, because the homeowners deserve the break, and the guys who are in these bottom feeders who go after zombie seconds and who seek to collect massive profits at the expense of the homeowner and often foreclose on them and cost them their house in the process, I think could use a stake through their heart. So we're talking all about that. My wife Jane, the attorney in the family, the legal eagle, the brains of the operation, the better looking one, is in here with us today. Nice enough to come in and talk to us about the law, which is great. So that way I don't have to get chided for saying things that only a lawyer can say, because you can be here to do that, which is nice. So it's always nice to have her in. Now, before we get into kind of the meat of it, because as promised, we're going to talk about these, I think it's 6 specific things that are now deemed an illegal act under this new law having to do with zombie mortgage. And again, a zombie mortgage is anything that's not a first mortgage, what's called a subordinate lien, second, third, fourth, whatever, that has gone uncollected or nobody's made any attempt to collect or talk to you or anything else for at least 3 years, presumably during the life of the loan. That's the number one law. We're going to talk about that as well. And that's the biggest one. There's another one's a good one too. We'll talk about that. But these are all things you can use to defend yourself. Again, brand new law just came into effect July 1st. Nobody knew about it. Everybody's kind of playing catch up with this. I haven't even heard a single news story about it, and it is a big, big deal. There are people right now, with the sound and within the sound of my voice, who are going to be able to save their houses, who for sure otherwise would have lost them. This law is going to keep people in their homes. It is that big a deal. I have literally been waiting 30 years for a law like this. So it is a huge deal. Now, the way it used to work, and we can talk about this a little bit, just so you know kind of how big a difference this is. We used to work under, we still do, a civil code that was 882.020. And you don't have to memorize the civil codes, but what the biggest part of this is, the intent was to say, if as a lender, if you haven't made an attempt to collect, within 10 years, the debt could be then time barred from collection. That was the original intent. But the way it worked out is, this happened in 1982, I think?
Yeah.
I'll let you guess as to what lobby had this law put in. I'll turn on all your cards to tell you the banking lobby. Anyway, what they changed it to, if the final maturity date can't be determined, so they make sure that it can't because they don't put the information on the deeds like they used to before 1982, then it automatically goes to 60 years. So think about that. You could have taken out a loan in 2000, and this loan is still, even though no one's talked to you, and it's now 2060, and nobody said a single word about this loan, they could still go after it.
Just a point of clarification as
Sure.
well. This is not, that doesn't have to do with expiration of the debt, just the lien on the property to enforce the debt. The debt is still there.
Yeah, the foreclosure.
Just
yeah.
for everybody. Because some people conflate the two and
Sure.
figure if there's no lien, that means I don't owe the bank any money. That's not quite true.
It also means if they can't foreclose, if they're prevented from foreclosing, it makes it a whole lot easier to get a deal cut.
Well, there are steps they have to do before they can foreclose, and it's in that time period that you really need to kind of get in there with the banks and make the most of it, because they're more willing to negotiate then and now because of that than any other time I've seen.
We had a bank that's been totally intractable with the client. They've been impossible to deal with. What they're demanding is insane because they absolutely want to foreclose on this house because there's a lot of equity in it. That all of a sudden yesterday said, here's an loan offer. The new frame, they're getting this from all the banks. I love this phrase now. We're willing to work with anyone who's willing to work with us. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been willing to work with you for months.
Very long time.
But I wonder what changed that changed your attitude, your operate. Could it be this new law? Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, of course it's the new law. They've lost a lot of their power. They can't threaten people the way they have been with foreclosure.
Well, particularly right now, because what happened was this law took effect immediately. It was signed on the 30th of June, took effect on July 1st. Mm-hmm. It applies to all transactions and all mortgages and foreclosures that are in process. So they could have had a foreclosure that started months ago, years ago, with a notice of default and they're about to foreclose on July 2nd, they're now in violation of this law if they haven't filed, and I guess this is a good time to point out.
Yeah, let's talk about the rules.
So what has to happen now is for a foreclosure of a subordinate lien, and this is interesting, not just zombie seconds. This applies to foreclosure of any subordinate lien. The notice of default that is filed with the county and given to the homeowner to start the foreclosure process has to include certain things. With the recorded document, they have to file a certification. This is they call it the mortgage servicer. Typically, the loan is not owned by the same company that services it, so you may have separate or the same. But the mortgage servicer has to sign a certification under penalty of perjury that neither they nor any previous servicer in the entire length of the loan,
including companies that may no longer exist,
especially including companies that may no longer exist, have not committed any of these unlawful practices that all essentially have to do with failing to communicate with the homeowner as required. Mm-hmm. So we'll go over those. But so it doesn't even have to be a zombie mortgage. This applies to any mortgage, any subordinate mortgage that's being foreclosed on. The idea is that the bank has to file this certification in order to essentially show that it isn't a zombie mortgage and it hasn't died because they have failed to communicate. And then they also have to send the homeowner a copy of that certification, along with a notice to them that they have the right to go to court and to ask the court to stop the foreclosure. And that's one of the more extreme parts of this is if the homeowner goes to court and petitions the court to stop the sale, the court must stop the sale, and it is stopped until the petition has been determined. The judge has come down with a ruling on
been
this.
adjudicated,
They will find a way to do it fairly quickly. And this isn't going to be years in all likelihood, like sometimes a typical case, but it will absolutely be months. That gives much needed time for transactions to take place. So the idea being they have to certify that it's not a zombie mortgage. And if it isn't, then presumably they can proceed. But you have to kind of start from scratch now. So again, that house waiting to go to sale on July 2nd, now they have to go back and file a new notice of default, which is 90 days before they then do the notice of sale,
21 days after
which
that,
is a
they
couple
can-
weeks out from there. So it's adding a huge amount of time, even beyond just the zombie mortgage area, but certainly that's where the biggest impact is going to be.
Basically, what we're talking about is this is a whole new toolkit to prevent zombie mortgages from foreclosing. Well, any subordinate mortgages, as you would correct me, from foreclosing. This is a sea change. This is the biggest change in legislation regarding mortgages to protect the homeowner and the consumer that I've seen in my 30 years of doing this. I think it's probably the biggest change we've seen that's at least in favor of the homeowner for 50 years.
Absolutely. It put the onus on the bank to show that they have been diligent about their job. And really, I'll summarize for you. I just want to make sure.
This is, of course, a recipe for banks to lie their asses off, which they absolutely will.
But at least,
for sure.
But at least here, see, a lot of these other notifications, it's the bank just signed something saying, yeah, we called the homeowner, or
That's why there was a robo-signing
we
scandal in
mailed
2008.
something. But this is certified mail. It's recorded with the county. There are going to be very clear documents. They aren't going to be able to lie about it or be mistaken, let's just say.
Well, I have a feeling they're going to find a way. The banking industry has a way of doing that.
Absolutely, and I can already see ways in which they're going to try to tweak what they do to not be included here.
Yeah.
But just for purposes of summary, we're talking about this lack of communication. It does fall into 6 specific categories.
What are the 6 rules?
Okay, so the first one is failure to communicate with the homeowner, the borrower, for 3 years or more. 3 years with no communication puts you into square zombie mortgage territory.
Means they can't foreclose if they haven't contacted you in at least 3 years.
Well, it's not that they can't foreclose, but it becomes this unlawful practice. So that's we have to, categorize it like that. So it's failure to communicate for 3 years. It's failure to provide the notice that is required when your loan servicing is transferred. The third is failure to provide the borrower with the required notice when the ownership of the loan is transferred. It's what's the other one? Oh, yes, this is my favorite. When they've sent you a letter saying they have charged off the debt. What's the other phrase? Written off, written off, charged off. I've seen it where they've said
discharged,
paid down to zero.
Yeah, discharged they use a lot as well.
Discharged, yes, and that includes if you get a 1099 from them for income purposes for the IRS, but it doesn't have to be a 1099. So yeah, that always frustrated me when the bank did that. So I really enjoy that that's in there. I think that's very appropriate.
Well, there's also a decent theory. I mean, we'll see how it works out. But we have a friend who's a bankruptcy attorney who's quite good at this, and there's a theory that he's pursuing at the moment where if they have issued a 1099, he thinks with a Chapter 13 you can expunge the debt entirely. I mean, you can strip the second. Now, we'll see, because that hasn't been challenged yet. But this is also the same guy who kind of invented the stripping the debt. If one thing you can do to strip a second is if your house what you owe on your first over encumbers the house, if you owe more on the house than it's worth on just the first loan, you can use that in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy to wipe out junior debts, which is something that our friend Lou Esmond, friend of the show, which he sort of pioneered in the 80s and 90s. And that is the law of the land. And he thinks under the same sort of theory, especially, he's not sure yet, and I'll bring him on the show and he can tell you what he thinks himself, but you can wipe out, he thinks, well, I think anyway, you can wipe out the second, you can strip the second if they issued a 1099. We'll see. We don't know.
I am seeing more of that come along. Unfortunately, as we were talking about before, tenants have a lot of lobbying power and they have groups to support them, and there's a lot of influence put on politicians. Not so much for homeowners.
Yeah, homeowners don't.
Yeah, we don't collectively, have a lot of power there. So it's nice to see these come around. Just to finish up the unlawful practices, there's a generic one that is that the servicer has conducted or threatened to conduct a foreclosure sale beyond the statute of limitations, which it's a little fuzzy. This is one of those ones where I'm not.
Statute of limitations gets fuzzy.
I believe they're talking about the 10 or 60 year date in the other one, the 882 section. So that may not help much. But it depends on how they define the statute of limitations. I would like to see it apply to the statute of limitations on the underlying debt, which is 4 to 6 years, which is much more reasonable.
Which is what it should be.
And then the final category of the unlawful practices is technically failing to provide a periodic statement.
This is a biggie.
So, and technically, they're in violation and have committed an unlawful practice if they don't give you one monthly statement. Now, that comes into play later with the remedy, but they have committed this unlawful practice if they miss even one statement. So when they do their certification with the county, actually, the funny thing is when they do a certification, it has to be a certification that they have not violated or they have not committed any unlawful practices, except they also, in the alternative, could list the instances in which they have committed unlawful practices. And I will eat my hat. I will go buy a hat and eat it if any bank ever lists a bunch of unlawful practices.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening.
Well, because if they list unlawful practices, you can also use that as an affirmative defense, right?
In a judicial foreclosure, yes, it's an affirmative defense. So you can see that these unlawful practices range from arguably quite small to significant impact. So,
well, and a couple of those aren't new. Like they're telling you, who the servicer is. That changing. They had to tell you that before. Changing who the ownership of the loan was. They're supposed to tell you that before. But the problem we have with a lot of these things is the servicer would stand up and yell at the top of their lungs that they absolutely sent you that notice that they sent it, and then you have to prove you didn't get it.
Yeah. So certified mail is going to be easy to check.
This is huge.
I also like things that keep the post office in business.
Yeah, you and me both.
That's good.
So this is absolutely huge. I mean, the difference that this is going to make to people, as I said, there are people right now all over the state of California. There are people right now within the sound of my voice who this will save their homes. This will prevent them from losing a house to a zombie second, which, and again, as prices start to go down, we're going to see more and more of these coming out of the woodwork.
Although this is a good time to jump to the remedy portion of this, because I don't want people to think that this is going to get rid of the debt. And it doesn't necessarily mean the bank can't foreclose on the property. What it means is the banks have to file the certification. They have to follow this brand new procedure before they can file an NOD, threaten to foreclose, or certainly conduct a trustee sale. And if a borrower, I don't think it technically has to be a zombie mortgage. It's just if the borrower petitions the court before the foreclosure sale in any subordinate mortgage, the judge must stop the foreclosure sale until they can determine the outcome. Yeah. Now, the next step is, though, the outcome is going to be what's fair. I'll use that.
To the judge,
the judge has to apply equitable remedies. Mm-hmm. So it could be something as simple as, okay, they have 6 months to get arrearages paid, and then they can foreclose. So maybe it's stalled for 60 days or a couple months, or maybe the judge says, no, the arrearages, because you didn't communicate, they don't have to pay you that now, they just have to start paying now. Or maybe the interest rate, so it could be anything. It could be that he or she determines that the bank can foreclose, but I think in most cases it's not going to be that extreme. It's just going to be conditions to the foreclosure, perhaps adjusting the amount due or the interest. There's lots of things they can do. But for our clients, a lot of people we see, the time is what's going to be helpful to them more than anything.
And again, a lot of this is, I love this law. I really do, because it's super useful. But until it starts making its way through the court system and it gets adjudicated and it makes its way over through, there are going to be various appeals and various other things to it. And until we get through that, we're not entirely sure where we're going to land. But for the moment, neither are the banks.
Yes.
And that's what we've been able to make a lot of hay out of, because they are terrified of liability, which they should be, because when you're doing things that are wrong. You should be afraid of liability. But the biggest thing here that drives me crazy is we have this new set of laws, which is great. I've been waiting for this forever. I cannot tell you how thrilled I am with this, and more importantly, our clients are with this. But the problem that we have is nobody knows about it.
Yeah.
I do not know how this was not the lead on the local news and on the national news on July 2nd.
Yeah,
definitely
we're going to have to educate homeowners. We're going to have to educate judges. They get in front of them. You can't assume the judges are going to know any of this stuff.
Well, there are just to give you guys some understanding of the numbers here. There are easily hundreds of thousands of these zombie mortgages in California right now. I was reading one survey that thinks there's over 1,000,001. Over 1 million zombie mortgages in California right now, with a face value of $10 billion.
And because we've hit the peak of the market, essentially, now is when they're coming out of the woodwork. This is it.
Do you honestly think that financial institutions are not going to go after what could possibly be a $10 billion windfall? And all they have to do is throw people out of their houses? In a state where the homelessness problem is already run rampant, they probably shouldn't want to do that, but you can't ignore the economic incentive that they have.
Yeah.
I mean, the numbers are crazy. And it's about time the state of California, however slip slide it might have been if they got this law through, it is about time that the state of California finally decided to wake up and do something about this. Now, they didn't do enough in my view, but at least it's something.
It's a good start.
Yeah, it's a very good start.
Yeah.
I think it's wonderful. I really, really do. As much trouble as I have with the politicians in this state and other places, California's weird. We don't have, or we do have, I should say, we're the only ones who have mortgages work like this. No other state has even a 60-year statute of limitations. That's ridiculous.
That's outrageous.
In Florida, it's I think 5. In New York, it's 6. And there are different rules, different states, certainly. But 60 years is insane. The debt is not meant to outlive the person who took out the note. That's ridiculous. And now this, it doesn't reverse that, but at least it curtails it. So I tell you, we've got some other things we want to talk about when we get back from break. Our long-suffering engineers giving me a no, so we got to go to break. Those of you who listen regularly know I suck at hitting the brakes and the hard out. We're going to do it. We're going to do well today because Jane's here. I don't want to show off. So let's go to break. We'll hear from our advertisers. We'll come back. We'll talk all about another law that sort of works alongside this one that will also prevent foreclosures, known as AB 2424 when it was in the House. Again, you're listening to The Fix with Rich on KHTS AM 1220 FM 98.1, your hometown station. Talk to you soon.
Does your home...
Hey everybody, thanks for listening through the break. You're listening to The Real Estate Fix. I'm your host, Rich Szerman, on KHTS 98.1 FM, AM 1220, your hometown station. And we have my lovely wife, Jane Szerman, in today. She's the real estate attorney in the group. And she's teaching us all about this new law that just passed, Civil Code 2924.13, which I'm just going to call the Zombie Second Law.
Sure.
Because you don't need to memorize civil codes. And I know a lot of this stuff can sound kind of dry when we're talking attorney stuff and civil code stuff, but really the bottom line is this is going to save people's houses. If you're in foreclosure, if you're in danger of foreclosure, if you have a friend who's in a family or whatever, if they live in the state of California, this is going to be a help to them. And it's one of 2 laws that we want to talk about. This is the biggie, and this is the new one, and it's changing everything. And if you do have an issue with any of this stuff and you have any questions, you can give me a call anytime. I give my cell phone number on the air all the time. It's 661-714-1400. That number again is 661-714-1400. You can call me at that number anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Although I do sleep and shower on occasion. So if I don't answer, go ahead and send me a text and I'll call you right back. Anyway, so we've been talking about this new law, and basically there's a slew of things now that if a bank does, it's deemed an illegal act, and it slows down and in some cases prevents their ability to foreclose.
Yeah.
So it's a big, big deal, and it has to do with the bank communicating with the homeowner, with the borrower, which is something they should be doing all along anyway. But the statutes in California, circa 1982, were changed, and they became ridiculous.
I will point out, as long as we're talking about that real quickly, that's the 6th item that's unlawful practices. And that's the periodic statements that go. And there are people who haven't gotten those for years, but they don't have to get them by law. A couple big categories are, as I understand it, reverse mortgages don't have to get those notices. Sure. If you have filed bankruptcy in the past, 10, 20 years ago, they don't have to keep giving you the periodic statements, although the other requirements are still there. And what's the other? There was one more about the...
Well, there are a lot of hairs still to be split on this law because it's a brand new law.
I guess I'm just telling people, if you haven't gotten statements for a couple of years, don't get too excited about it. You may not be entitled to them as well. So individually, that may apply differently.
There's no such thing as a get-out-of-jail-free card. It's not Monopoly. But at the same time, this is a very powerful tool. It's a very powerful suite of tools that we now have that we didn't have before. So... hear what I'm saying. This is a big deal, and it's not showing up in the news. Nobody's talking about this yet, and I don't understand why, because it is a huge, huge deal. And like I said, it will save people's houses. There's one other thing I want to talk about, as long as we have you in today. We had our local assemblywoman in about a month ago on the show to talk about a bill she got passed. It's called AB 2424, and again, boring you guys with the numbers. But what that does is it extends the time frame, if you use it properly, it extends the time frame to give you the ability to sell a house if it's in foreclosure.
Yeah, that's a nice one right at the end there. That's for a very specific purpose to sell the property.
There are two. This is a pretty simple one, so I'll give it a shot at explaining. You can tell me where I'm wrong. I like it when she tells me where I'm wrong. We do this all the time. It's for those of you who are in happy marriages and you're married to somebody who's smarter than you are. It's not necessarily a bad thing. You just have to accept that that's the situation. Now, I'm not saying I'm not brilliant. I'm pretty sharp. I'm just saying she's smarter than I am. What can I tell you? Anyway, but together we do pretty well, and more importantly, the clients benefit from it. So our win-loss ratio is pretty high. So anyway, so what this new law does, and this one's been around for about 2 months. I mean, think about the changes just in the last 90 days. My goodness.
Has it just been 2 months?
Yeah, it's about a little about 2.5. Anyway, so what it does is it says if you are within 5 days, or just 6 days or more, of a scheduled foreclosure date, and you present the trustee with a fully executed listing contract with a valid California broker, of which I am, and they then have to postpone the foreclosure sale. And this is the law. It's black letter. They have no choice. They have to postpone the foreclosure sale for 45 days to give you an opportunity to market and sell the house. Wait, it gets better. At the end of that 45-day period, if again you have to be outside of 5 days, so 6 days or more away from the foreclosure sale date, and you give them a fully executed purchase contract, they have to then give you another 45 days. So you've taken a process that is typically 111 days, 90 days for a notice of default, 21 days for a notice of sale, and then they effect the sale on the 21st day. And we now have the ability to extend that by 90 days. Now you lose 5 days coming and going, so you lose 10 days. So it's 80 days practically. So we gained an additional 80 days in what was heretofore an 111-day process. That's massive. That gives us an extra 3 months to get things sorted out. Now maybe we're sorting it out because we're selling a house. Maybe we're just sorting it out because we're buying some more time to get a loan modification done, or get some other defense in place. And you got to do these things in good faith, obviously.
Now, keep in mind, right now we've got that existing, and then this stuff dropped on top of it means we're going to have a window here of 3 to 4 months at least, where you can use this first, which is you didn't file the correct notice of default. You are not following the California law. And then if you need additional time, then that stage comes into play. So between the two, it's going to add a bit.
I'm shocked. For most of my professional career, I've done pro bono work. I've done foreclosure defense for people for free. And I'm proud of the work we've done, and I'm proud of the number of people who are still in their houses all over the state, all over the country now, with the work that we've done. And I think it's fantastic. And getting these two massively new sets of tools.
Big deal.
Both the extension to sell, which doesn't necessarily have to be used to sell, but you can kind of make it work that way. And this set of laws through 2924 is just massive, and people will be able to keep their homes who otherwise would not. And basically, but right now, I keep telling my staff, let's use the confusion. Because for the same reason, we don't know how a lot of these laws are going to balance out. I mean, we know it's on the page, but we don't know how they're going to get adjudicated. Neither do the banks. We've got banks right now who 2 weeks ago told us to pound sand, and they're going to just take everything they can get, like they're Mongols on a weekend pass, and instead have now rolled over and asked us to rub their belly. I mean, it's insane. I had one yesterday, where the original loan amount was $50,000. Loan has been uncollected. Nobody's done anything for 19 years. And we got a hold of the bank who has it, a bank called Mary West, and they came back and they said, well, we want $227,000 in change. And we went, no, we're not getting that. And because you didn't communicate, it's a dead loan, blah, blah. And they, well, we want to work with anyone who's willing to work with us, which I love that phrase. It's a new banking phrase I'm hearing all the time from multiple banks. It's like a letter went out, a postcard or something. They're all saying that now. And within our first conversation, they dropped it down to $49,000, which was the original amount of the debt that's remaining. So our negotiating point isn't $227,000, it's $49,000.
Big difference.
I'm trying to get them down to half of that. So we'll see what happens. We may only get down to 49. I have to stop there. But right off the bat, with almost no negotiation, we just saved $170,000. Yeah. That's a big, big deal. So yeah, these laws are huge. They make a big difference. If you know anyone who's got a problem, if you've got a problem yourself, we do this confidentially. It's not a problem. Give me a call. 661-714-1400. You can also go to the new website, richsherman.com. You can email me, richsherman@gmail.com. You can certainly find me through the station, but call me or text me. That's usually the fastest, 661-714-1400. That is my cell phone number, and I do pick up, not when I'm on the air, Mom, but I do pick up, and I will call you back, and I will help you out, I promise. We're very good at this. We do very, very well on the law, and we do it for free. So the laws are there to help you. Make use of them. You've got to say, these are my rights. If you don't assert your rights, you will lose them. So this is incredibly important. So thank you guys for listening. That's our time. We're going to wrap up the show today. I'm actually going to hit the heart out because Jane's here and I'm trying to show off. So thank you guys. 10 seconds. So thank you guys for listening. Have a good weekend. Have a good week. If you have any questions, call me. Be good humans. Love you all. Bye.